Welcome to Hard Questions. This is where we tackle tough issues and answer hard questions right from God's Word. Panelists today are a steady anchor on the right, Dr. William Glaze from Bethany Baptist Church in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Pastor Pete Giacalone from Rainbow Temple in McKeesport, Pennsylvania, Pastor J. Anthony Gilbert from Covenant Church on the Hill in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Sean Bolts, Senior Pastor at Expression 58 in Los Angeles, California. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Glad you are here.
I'm so
Gentlemen,
glad to be here.
Yes. As always, a great privilege to be with you and to open up to our family and get a chance to hear from a pastor. Now, you may not even have a church that you're going to. If you don't have a church, we encourage you to find a church, and there's 3 good ones right here. Not pointing at anybody particular, but there's 3 good ones right here that you could start. God has a place for you in a church. Amen. But this is a place for you to send your questions in. So get ready. If you have a question, send it to us. I'll tell you how in just a minute. But today's question, what made you believe, think about this, that God was real? When was it? And what made you believe? Because you got to get to that place, you know. Especially you, Pastor, you're an intellectual guy. What got you to that place that you could put aside your logic and believe that God was real?
Well, you know, I think that, and I don't want to use a canned expression, but all my life, you know, I believed in God. And even when I didn't know him, he wasn't my Savior, I believed in him. But what made him become real to me is when I saw him move in my life. And I think it was particularly a time in my life when I was in seminary. And, you know, just didn't have a lot of resources. And I just saw God just show up in miraculous ways. Just one illustration, I remember I got a shutoff notice for my electricity in the mail and just got it. And, you know, they said they were going to shut it off that afternoon and needed $140. And so my wife and I, we prayed. I had one child at the time. We asked her to pray. And I really tried to get her to get a prayer burden. I said, Nicole, if they turn off the electricity, you're not going to have any warm food. You're going to have to sleep with blankets. And then I said something that I think really got her. I said, they're going to turn off the electricity and you're not going to be able to watch cartoons. So, you know.
Touched her heart.
Yeah, that's right. So we prayed and it wasn't more than an hour later, somebody that was just as poor as I was knocked on the door and just handed me an envelope with 7 $20 bills in it, just enough for the electric bill.
Just exactly enough.
And I knew, that showed me, man, God is, you know, awesome. Yeah.
Pastor, how about you? When did you come into that discovery?
Well, I've heard it said like this: a man with an experience is never at mercy to a man with an argument. And God is the God of generations. He said, I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I remember growing up, I attribute me knowing God and believing in God because of how my father lived it. My dad lived it. I remember waking up at 5:30 in the morning, and I'd hear my dad's face planted in the couch, and he would be praying, and I would feel the presence of God when he prayed. Even though I wasn't really acknowledging it or walking in it, I saw it in his life every day. People would come to my house and say, there's something different about your home. And I went to other people's houses, it just wasn't the same. And the way my father and my mother lived it every day, it got imparted into my life. So when I was out there clubbing and running around doing different things, long story short, God met me in the club because of my dad's prayers and said, go home, your time is up here. And that's when I knew that God was real in my life.
So you had that root.
I had a root.
You had to, Pastor, how about you?
You know, I grew up in a Christian home, and I actually never had one of those crazy falling away periods, but I knew enough of God to have to know him, but not enough to really understand how to connect to him in a real relational way. And so when I was around 15, I had 8 friends die in 1 month of different things. And so I just felt like so much empathy for death. I just was like, am I going to die? Who's going to die next? What's going to happen? And I just started praying, and I was reading through the Bible, and one night when I was praying in my room, I put my hands up, and just like, you know, as if I was worshiping, but I was reading the Bible, and I was putting my hands up, and I felt hands in my hands. Oh. And it was so strong, and I just knew, like, you're the God who loves me. I'm not going to die. I'm going to be okay. And you let all of those friends happen to be saved, which was really an encouraging part to know they really did go to heaven. I really do get to see him again. And I just was so comforted by just his generous love, you know, just this connection. I was like, I've known you my whole life, but I haven't had this yet, this connection, this deeper place. And I was a teenager. Wow. Which I think, you know, half of the world's population who does get saved before 15.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that's a powerful story, though. Yeah. A powerful story. Pastor Pete.
Same thing. I had a great Christian education in the Catholic Church. It was fabulous. The nuns really taught. I learned a true respect of God, but I must confess, I did not know God. He was something that I feared so dramatically that, that it was a long distance kind of. But when I was 17, I had no peace, no joy. And I'll never forget it. I just, one night before going to bed, this was during the height of the Jesus movement back in the 70s. And I, before I went to bed that night, I said, Lord, if you're real, I just cried out to him. I was tired of the mess. I was tired of no peace. And like all you guys said, when I cried out, Lord, if you will, please show me. It was that simple. Please show me. And I felt an overwhelming of his presence. I'm now 61 years old. And from that day to this day, he's never left me. Not that I deserve him. I love what you said. A man with an experience. Finish that.
It's never at mercy to a man with an argument.
That's right. And wasn't that the Apostle Paul's life? Paul shared his testimony. And when each one of us has our own individual testimony of Christ, it means everything.
What do you think, gentlemen, what do you think the biggest obstacle that the devil places in front of people to keep them from getting to that place of believing? Maybe they don't have that root that we were talking about. They didn't have that Christian family or that experience yet. What do you think the biggest wall is that the enemy puts up to try to block that truth?
Well, one thing I would think, because I see it a lot as a pastor, it just goes back to 1 John chapter 2, where he says, love not the world. And I just think that, so many people that are blinded because they have a great love for the world. And it's just very hard to see Christ. I mean, you're a Lord. It's like the devil took Jesus up to the temple, and it says that he showed him all the kingdoms of the world. And, and I think that's what a lot of people see, and that's what they strive for, and they miss what God has for them.
I've got to come over to Los Angeles here because that seems to be nature there. How do you see that obstacle?
I think I totally agree with that, but I also think that we're in a performance-driven culture, and we don't have a solid sense of identity, and we're always trying to be better and make ourselves better. So it's hard to slow down and be vulnerable and say, if I say I need you, I'm saying I'm not enough. And I think our culture is afraid to say I have needs that are being unmet because we're supposed to be self-sufficient. So I see, at least in the Western world culture, I feel like it's hard for people to slow down to be vulnerable and to value vulnerability. And it takes vulnerability to say, God, I need you. I need help. I'm not enough in myself, but I can be everything in you. And it's just hard for people.
Why is it, Pastor Jay, why is it that we put our place in, we put it on our back, our success, our responsibility to achieve our best performances? Why do you think man puts that, or man and women puts that on ourselves?
Well, I heard a man say the greatest sin that man will ever commit is that he feels he can manage his life without God. And that's what the fall in the garden was all wrapped around. He said, God's holding me back from something. I've got a better plan and I've got a better way. Many times we just think that we have a better plan, we have a better way. We don't have that total trust to believe that, God has a good plan for our life. God's going to work things out for me. God's going to do some awesome things with my life. He's not going to ask you to give everything up and give you nothing. So I think it's just coming to the reality of knowing him and realizing that he does have a good plan for your life and that you don't have to do it on your own.
Maybe that's done in steps. Maybe it's done in steps. So you just need to come to that place where you can surrender and trust. God's okay with you talking to him. He's okay with you even negotiating with him, if you will. He said, come let us reason together. Amen. So it's okay if you go to him and say, God, I want to know you, but I don't seem to have a connection with you. Can you make that clear? That little teeny baby step in the direction where you can say, I don't want to carry the weight anymore. I am not able. I'm not heading in the right direction. I can't bear the weight. I'm not being successful. I think that's why men are so likely, or predominantly likely, to end their own lives between ages 35 and 55, because the expectation that life is going to be different than it is. Well, life can be different than it is, but you can't do it. Let God do it through you and in you, then there's peace. And this is the time of peace. This is when we celebrate Christmas. So between now and Christmas, consider this very simple thing. What baby step can you take to go out to God? Go out to God. Give it to him. Talk to him like you talk to me, and ask him to take something from you that you don't want anymore. And then you'll see it'll be amazing how he changes your life. We hope you've enjoyed it, this edition of Hard Questions. I have. Thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your testimony. Really, that's kind of sharing your testimony of Sword. It's important. There's power in that. We'd love to hear your question. Email us to hardquestions@ctvn.org, and we'll take your question, bring it to the pastor board. God bless you. We'll be right back.